People are upset about the Sydney Sweeney ad. Now, I've seen a number of videos try to explain why this is. They are titled, Why People are Angry About This Ad, Why People Hate Sydney Sweeney, but they never really get to the why. They never really explain why. And so that's what we're going to do in this video, is dive into the why. And to sum it up, why people hate this ad, why people hate Sydney Sweeney, is because she doesn't hate herself. Now stick around and I'll explain what I mean by that. Our culture is heavily dominated by what one could, I think, accurately describe as a cult. A group of people who all instinctively know what to object to, what to be in favor of. They all move without any clear leader or clear, person directing them to what to hate or what to destroy or what to be in favor of. Yet they all instinctively know this. It's a cult without a leader, a religion without a god. Now, I don't want to use the term left just because that has such political connotation, and there are plenty of people who vote Democrat who wouldn't fall into this category, and there are plenty of people on the right who would fall into this category, I think, and many in between. What's at the root of this cult is ideology. It's not just a momentary political phenomenon. And there are two main reasons that make up why these people hate this ad and what makes up this self-loathing that drives them. One is the hatred of beauty, and two is the hatred of the West that's wrapped up with this modern Marxist form of racism. Now first, I want to describe to you what motivates this cult, what draws them together, and how they sort of instinctively know what to hate, what to be against, what to attack. So stick with me while I describe this as quickly as I can. So at the core of this cult, what really drives them on an emotional level is insecurities. Now, an insecurity is quite a normal human thing. If you feel insecure about your body weight, it could be your ability to attract the opposite sex, or just your efficacy in life in general. Being insecure is a normal thing, but here is the key, is the way we handle an insecurity is really important. We can either, one, acknowledge that we have the insecurity and either feel crappy about it or do something about it, or two, we can try and not feel that pain, not feel the pain of insecurity, not recognize the fact that we have an insecurity, which means blaming something external. And the latter is basically the whole of the modern culture. Basically everything around us is dedicated to trying to make you not acknowledge the emotional pain that an insecurity creates within you by explaining it away through some external source, which is why this cult just instinctively, without even knowing themselves why they are for or against the things that they are for or against. Which is why anytime you ask them what drives them, what they're motivated for or against, their explanations are riddled with contradictions and things that just don't make any sense. It's because it's an emotional source that's driving this. This is why they crave things like a safe space, where they'll be certain that no one will bring up a thing that they are insecure about, a thing that they don't want to acknowledge within themselves. It's why they cancel people, because someone mentions something that they don't want it mentioned or acknowledged. And they want them canceled because, clearly this person's not a part of our cult, where we're trying to create this new world where no one will think about the things we don't want to think about. It's why these people are so psychotically obsessed with what other people are thinking, what other people believe or don't believe, or see and recognize. They desperately want to control what people think, which is why they are so obsessed with the portrayal of characters in TV shows and video games and movies. They are absolutely obsessed with how advertising portrays in the most minute detail, what the body weight of this person, or the skin tone of that person, or what's the heritage of that actress, or whatever. They are motivated by running away from the emotional pain caused by a fact that they don't want to deal with, which the result of that is being neurotically focused on making sure that the whole world doesn't acknowledge that fact. And what most people don't really realize is that when we rationalize, which is what it means to, make up reasons as to why some invalid claim makes sense, like, oh, beauty is actually, totally subjective and it's totally made up, which is why being incredibly fat and ugly is totally fine, and, beautiful people shouldn't be seen as beautiful, and I'm beautiful too. That's all a rationalization. And what many people don't realize is that rationalizations can be turned into a whole way of looking at the world, an ideology, in other words. And it's that way of functioning as an ideology that dominates our culture. So even though there might be very many different groups of people like this, whether they're on the left or the right or in between, or they're old, they're young, whatever it might be, there's still this common denominator that they all sort of subconsciously move towards. There's no leader, there's no prophet telling them to move in any direction or to be for or against something in particular, because it's all subconscious. They are driven by their insecurities. We are taught that someone being offended is like the primary thing to be avoided. And of course, what's behind that offense is someone feeling insecure about whatever it is that they're offended by. I don't want the fact that I'm ugly to be recognized. In terms of self-esteem, what is at the root of an insecurity is really the budding of self-hatred, because it's you don't like something about yourself. You're too fat, you're too ugly, you're too whatever. And I'm not saying that you are these things, it's how you feel about yourself. I mean, you could be very attractive and yet think that you're very ugly. That would still be an insecurity. But what's at the core of it is self-hatred. You hate how you are. You hate the way you look. You hate the way you feel about yourself. I just want to make it clear, though, that insecurity is a totally normal human thing to feel. We all are going to feel insecure about something. The question is how do we deal with it? Do we face that insecurity and say, you know what? Like, maybe I could stand to lose a few pounds, or maybe I'm not the most attractive person on earth, but that's okay. Versus, that makes me uncomfortable and I do not want to think about it, and I do not want anyone in the world to point out anything related to that fact because it makes me upset. Those are the way we deal with the insecurity is the problem. But like I was saying earlier, whole movements that dominate our culture, like the anti-beauty campaigns going on with, making sure that all our ads have fat women in it instead of attractive women, wanting to make sure all our video game characters are really unfeminine, unattractive, bizarre creatures that don't really represent an actual human. And even something like feminism. The whole of feminism is driven by women's insecurities around certain subjects, or men's insecurities if it's a man who falls into it.
Men want bad things, right? It's like men want to have sex and like own women, right? Like they want to dominate everybody.
If a woman feels insecure about her attractiveness, which is, again, a totally natural thing, it's feminists who will come and whisper in her ear and say, "Ooh, it's actually because, all these very attractive women on billboards and all these pretty girls in your school that you are envious of. Oh, it's all their fault, and it's men who have created this, oppressive world that makes you feel uncomfortable and feel bad about yourself. And you shouldn't feel bad about yourself, but instead hate the patriarchy and hate men and hate the beauty world and hate beauty." These are all rationalizations to get away from dealing with the actual emotion. So next time that you see someone freaking out, if they are freaking out and making these grand claims of, ooh, there's an attractive girl on there, therefore Nazis, it's probably because they are motivated by their insecurities. And they are uncomfortable by whatever it is that they're seeing, and instead of saying, I'm uncomfortable, they're blaming the external source. They're blaming the thing that made them uncomfortable, not themselves. The anti-beauty sentiments that dominate our culture today. I mean, I remember this back when I was in middle school, like over 10 years ago, 15 years ago at this point. I remember Dove came out with the Real Beauty campaign or whatever they called it. I can't even remember. But it was this campaign where it wasn't, at the beginning, it was not enshrining ugliness, but it was the beginning of this premise that, like, there's something wrong with having attractive women on a billboard. There's something wrong with having beautiful people in the world around us. There's something wrong with that. And of course, what was driving that was an insecurity about one's own attractiveness. And that is a huge reason why people are so antagonistic to this ad, is because here we are having an attractive woman in an ad again. It's not some self-righteous ugly person or self-righteous freak. It's an attractive woman. And that's what they hate. They hate it because they are insecure about their own attractiveness. Or they've been led to believe that having an attractive person on a billboard is somehow saying that, like, anyone who isn't beautiful like that is like a subhuman scum or something like that. That comes from them. That comes from their own insecurity. That's how they feel. It's not what the ad is saying. That's what no beautiful person is saying that. That's what the ugly, insecure people feel about themselves, that they are then projecting onto everyone else. And of course, feminism is a big driver of this, that, having an attractive woman being shown as a good thing. There's something wrong with that. The having men see attractive women and like it, that's bad. That's a bad thing. And Sydney Sweeney seems to be not shy about showing off the fact that she is attractive. And bringing it back to that core essence of self-hatred, this is a huge reason why male feminists hate a man who is confident with himself around women. If he can walk up to women and is confident and, he feels good about himself, male feminists will hate that guy. And female feminists will absolutely hate that guy as well. Female feminists hate a man who feels good about himself, which is why they are so focused on, men who look at women without shame, who will look at a woman and find her attractive without feeling like that's a dirty or gross, horrible thing. For instance, the world is filled with horrific things done to women. In the Middle East, we could just go down a long list of the horrific things, the horrible way they treat women. But feminists don't give a shit about that. But they do care about a man in a bar, just looking at a woman and liking her and winking at her or flirting. Oh my God. A man confidently being flirtatious with a woman, that's the true evil of the world. What's at the core of that is not wanting respect for women. That's what they'll say. Oh, we just want respect. We don't want to be sexualized. That's not it. It's the self-hatred. They do not like to see a man who feels confident in himself and sees a woman and sees her in a sexual way and sees that as a good thing and likes it, takes pleasure in it. That's what they hate. And of course, we have the hatred of the West that is wrapped up in Marxist racism. And this includes white guilt, intersectionality, critical race theory, and so much more. It's all just Marxism wrapped in racism. They tell us that we are all grouped into different tribes based on skin color, or some will say, culture or heritage or whatever, but it's skin color. And we're all grouped into these warring tribes that are, we're determined by our skin color and we're all at war with one another. And that's just Marxism, but with skin color instead of, say, class. Now, without going into too much detail, essentially, we're taught that the West is pure evil, that anyone who is from the West is, has this sort of stain on their soul from, the wickedness of civilization. If you're white, you're from the West, you're from Europe, and Europe is just pure evil. And why we're taught to hate this is because civilization is great. Western civilization is really wonderful and good. It's given us basically every good thing that we have around us. All the technology, all of the moral achievements, all the intellectual achievements that we have. One thing people will say is the West had slaves, as if the West invented that. But actually, the thing that the West did invent is the idea that slavery is wrong. But no, we're not taught that. We're taught that the West had slaves. But we're not taught that everyone else in the world had slaves. In fact, many of whom had more slaves than, like America did. We're only taught that the West had slaves, and therefore we're all evil. Everyone who is white is evil forever. It doesn't make any sense because it doesn't need to make sense. It's not about that. It's not about making sense. It's about the hatred of the West and trying to make it look evil. And that's why when people see this Sydney Sweeney ad where it's a white woman saying that she has good genes, meaning she's attractive, people are just viscerally angry at it because it's not a white woman saying, yes, I'm white and I'm evil and horrible. It's the absence of self-loathing within her that they hate. And you can see their blatant racism in their sort of retort ad with Beyonce. Now, I'm not sure if the ad with Beyonce was an official thing, like with a slogan saying that Beyonce has good genes, but it was passed around by people who criticized the one with Sydney Sweeney, saying, oh yeah, the one with Beyonce is good, but the one with Sydney Sweeney is not good. But the thing is, only a racist would see a difference there, because if you get rid of the skin color acknowledgement and just make it generic skin color, like someone of a certain skin color has good genes, oh, that's racist. Someone of a certain skin color has good genes, ooh, that's fine. It's literally the same statement, but one's okay and the other isn't. So it's not that she is explicitly saying being white is good or being white is okay even. It has nothing to do with that. It's that it's the absence of a kind of self-loathing. It doesn't need to say it explicitly, but so long as these types feel like that self-loathing is present. For instance, that Jaguar ad, that was just dripping with this hatred of men, hatred of women, hatred of that creepy Marxist hatred of white people. It's okay because it's going along with the self-loathing that these insecure people feel. But if an attractive woman is shown as attractive, and that's good, and that's something to be happy for, and for people to celebrate, that's what sets these people off, because that's what they're against. They don't want people to feel good about beauty. They don't want people to feel good about themselves, because they do not feel good about themselves. They hate themselves, and they want you to hate yourself. That's what drives this modern cult that we live in. The insanity of this world that we live in is driven by self-hatred. It's not about their arguments. It's not about their reasoning, which is why none of it makes any sense. None of it integrates. All of it contradicts, and they don't care if it contradicts. The reason why they don't care if it doesn't make sense or if it contradicts is because it's not about the ideas. It's not about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to make you feel the way they feel about themselves. The core emotion driving these people is envy. They hate the beautiful, the capable, the rich, the worthy. They hate all those things because that's what they aren't, and they know it. And that's the real reason people hate this ad, and they hate Sydney Sweeney, is because she doesn't hate herself. It's pretty clear just in the way she behaves and comports herself. She isn't riddled with self-loathing. And this flies in the face of the agenda that these people have. They want you to hate yourself.